Gauravitya Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chapter 1, Observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. As the opposing armies stand poised for battle, Arjuna, the mighty warrior, sees his intimate relatives, teachers, and friends in both armies ready to fight and sacrifice their lives. Overcome by grief and pity, Arjuna fails in strength. His mind becomes bewildered, and he gives up his determination to fight.
The screen is not visible.
Yes, 2 minutes. धृतराष्ट्रोवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामका पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जयः. O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Bhagavad Gita is widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. Example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. The topics discussed by as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind.
The word Dharmakshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want to compromise between his cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield, because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven. Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that he knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably, because by nature they were all victorious. Sanjay was a student of Vyasa, and therefore by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjay was able to uh, envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even when he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas, Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana, and others would be wiped out, and thoroughly religious persons, headed by Yudhishthira, would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the word Dharma Kshetra and Kurukshetra apart from the historical and Vedic importance.
Sanjay उवाच दृष्ट्वा तु पाण्डुवानीकं व्यूढं दुर्योधनस्तदा आचार्यमुपसंगम्य राजा वचनमब्रवीत्. Sanjay said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Purport. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of a spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Since he was doubtful about the entrance of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjay could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. Sanjay wanted therefore to encourage the despondent king and thus assured him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjay therefore informed the king that his son Duryodhan, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief Dronacharya to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhan is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician, but Duryodhan's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas.
पश्येतां पाण्डुपुत्राणाम् आचार्यं हति च मुं व्यूढान् द्रुपदपुत्रेण तव शिष्येन धीमता. O my sister, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupad. Purport. Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with the king Drupad, the father of Draupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupad performed a great sacrifice by which he revived the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all his military secrets when the son of Drupad, Drishtadyumna, was entrusted to him for military education. Now, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Drishtadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who arranged for the military phalanx after having learned the art from Dronacharya. Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya's so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this, he wanted to point out also that he should not be similarly lenient in the battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna, especially, he was the most affectionate and brilliant student. Arjuna also wanted that Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to defeat.
अत्र शूरा महेश्वासा भीमार्जुना समायुति युयुधानो विराटश्च द्रुपदश्च महारथः. Here in this army are many heroic women equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. Great fighters like Yuyudhan, Virat and Drupad. Even though Drishtadyumna was not very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power with the military art, there were many others who were causes of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna and thus he compared the others with them.
दृष्टिकेतु चेकितानः काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान् पुरुजित् कुन्तिभोजश्च शैब्यश्च नरपुङ्गवः. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraja, Purujit, Kuntiboja, and Chaivya.
युधामन्युश्च विक्रान्त उत्तमौजश्च वीर्यवान् सुभद्र सभद्र द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्व एव महारथः. There are mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful, Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters.
अस्माकं तु विविष्टा ये तान् निबोध द्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य समज्ञानार्थं तान् द्रमिविते. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force.
भावान् भीमश्च कर्णश्च कृपाश्च समितिञ्जयः अश्वत्थामविकर्णश्च सामदत्तिस्तथैव च. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Duryodhan mentioned the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhan, Ashwathama is the son of Dronacharya, and Somadatti or Bhurishrava is the son of King Bahilikas. Karna is the half brother of Arjun as he was born of Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Dronacharya.
अन्ये च बहवः शूरा मद अर्थे त्यक्तजीवताः नानुशास्त्र प्राहरणाः सर्वयुद्ध विशारदाः. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. Purport. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, um, Kritvarma, and Shalya, are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battlefield of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above mentioned combined strength of his friends.
अपर्याप्तं तद् अस्माकं बलं भीष्म विरक्षितं पर्याप्तं त्वदमेतेषां बलं भीमा विरक्षितम्. Our strength is immeasurable and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas carefully protected by Bhima is limited. Herein an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of battle victorious was well ascertained.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. अन्येषु अन्येषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागम् अवस्थिताः भीष्माम् एवाभिकाङ्क्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि. All of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana was praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that uh, that they had been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Deva was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his uh, protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the he might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of this full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depend on the presence of Bhishma Deva. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Deva and Dronacharya and the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, has appealed to them for justice while she was being um, forced to appear naked in the presence of all great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up as they had done during the gambling performances.
तस्य सञ्जयन् हर्षं कुरु वृद्ध पितामहः सिंहनादं विनद्योच्चैः शङ्खं दद्मो प्रतापवान्. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandson of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like a roar of a lion, giving Duryodhan joy. The grandson of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson Duryodhan, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhan that he had no chance of victory in the battle because the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection.
ततः ततः शङ्काश्च धैर्यश्च पर्णवाना पर्णवानक गोमुखः सहस्व सहस्वैभाभ्य सैव ध्यायन्ता सशब्दस्तुमुलो अभवत्. After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was um, tumultuous.
ततश्वेतर्हयर्युक्ते महति स्याधने स्थितौ माधव पाण्डवश्चैव दिव्यशङ्खौ प्रदध्मौ. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hand of Arjuna and Krishna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope for the victory. There was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Panduputranam Yesham Pakshi Janardana. Victory is always with the persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there, because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated had been donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna, and this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides wherever it was drawn over the three worlds.
पञ्चजन्यं ऋषिकेषु देवदत्तं धनञ्जयः पौण्ड्रं दधमौ महाशङ्खं कर्मविक्रोधः. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his the Devadatta, and Bhima, the ferocious eater and performer of the um, Herculean task, blew his terrific conch shell called Purport. Lord Krishna is referred as to Rishikesha in the verse because he is the owner of all the senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities are as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but He directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, He directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Rishikesha. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudeva because he appeared as a son of Vasudeva. His name is Devaki Nandan because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandan because he awarded his childhood pastime to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Parth Sarthi because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Rishikesha because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in the verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching health when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as Brik, uh, Brikrodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks such as killing demon Hidimba. The particular type of conch shells blown by different personalities on the side of Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune, so that they were predestinated to lose the battle, and that was the message announced by the sounds of the conch shells.
अनन्तविजयं राजा कुन्तीपुत्रो युधिष्ठिरः नकुलः सहदेवश्च सुघोष मणिपुष्पकौ काश्यश्च परमेश्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः धृष्टद्युम्न विराटश्च सात्यकीश्चापराजितः द्रौपदौ द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वशः पृथिवीपते सौभद्रश्च महाबाहु शङ्खुखान्दन्मौ पृथक् पृथक्. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Anantavijaya, and Nakul and Sahadev blew the Sughosh and Manipushpak. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virat, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells. Sanjay informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with the grandsire Bhishma down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from many states of the world. All were present there, and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to the king Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons.
सघोषो सघोषो धृतराष्ट्रं हृदयानि विदारयत् नभश्च पृथ्वीं चैव तुमूलो अभयानुनन्दन. The blowing of these different functions became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts and the sons of Dhritarashtra. Purport: when Bhishma Deva and others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there were no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned, but in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas' party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna One who takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity.
अतः व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धातराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पादे धनुरुद्यं पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदावाक्यम् इदम् आह महीपते. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words. The battle was just about to begin. It is understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas, who were guided by the direct instructions of Lord Krishna on the battlefield. The emblem of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna is another sign of victory, because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Ram in the battle between Ram and Ravan, and Lord Ram emerged victorious. Now both Ram and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Ram himself, and wherever Lord Ram is, his eternal servitor Hanuman and his eternal consort Sita, the goddess of fortune, are present. Therefore, Arjuna had no cause to fear any enemies whatsoever. And above all, the Lord of the senses, Lord Krishna, was personally present to give him direction. Thus, all good counsel was available to Arjuna in the matter of executing the battle. In such auspicious conditions arranged by the Lord for his eternal devotee lay the signs of assured victory.
सेनयोर उभयोर्मध्ये अर्जुन उवाच सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयाम्यच्युत यावद् एतान् निरीक्ष्य अहं योद्धुकामान् अवस्थितान् कैर्माया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of great trials of arms. Purport. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is addressed herein as infallible. As charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna, and since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted the position of a charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. In all circumstances, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. Supreme personality of Godhead, Rishikesha, Lord of the total senses. The relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes greater pleasure in in his pure devotees, assuming the advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of the orders. Since he is the master, everyone is under his order. No one is above him to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure. Although he is although he is the infallible master in all circumstances. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers, but he was forced to come onto the um, battlefield by the obstinacy of Duryodhana, who was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. Therefore, he was very anxious to see who the leading persons present on the battlefield were. Although there were no questions of a peacemaking endeavor on the battlefield, he wanted to see them again and see how much they were bent upon demanding an unwanted war.
युत्समानम् अवीक्षेऽहं या एते अत्र समागताः धातराष्ट्रस्तु दुर्बुद्धेर्युद्धे प्रिय च केशवः. Let me see those who have come here to fight. wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. It was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted to usurp the kingdom of the Pandavas by evil plans in collaboration with his father Dhritarashtra. Therefore, all persons who had joined the side of Duryodhana must have been birds of the same feather. Arjuna wanted to see them on the battlefield before the fight was begun, just to learn who they were, but he had no intention of proposing peace negotiations with them. It was also a fact that he wanted to see them to make an estimate of strength what he had to face, although he was quite confident of victory because Krishna was sitting by his side.
Sanjay Uvacha एवमुक्तो ऋषिकेशो गुडाकेशेन भारत सेनयोर उभयोर्मध्ये स्थापयित्वा रथोत्तमम्. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having been thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both the parties. Purport. In this verse, Arjuna is referred as Gudakesha. Gudaka means sleep, and one who conquers the sleep is called Gurakesha. Sleep also means ignorance. So Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment because that is the nature of a devotee. Even in waking or in sleep of a devotee, the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. Thus, a devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. This is called Krishna consciousness or Samadhi. As Rishikesha or the director of the senses and the mind of the living entity, Krishna could understand Arjuna's purpose in placing the charioteer in the midst of the armies. Thus, he did so and spoke as follows.
भीष्मद्रोण प्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षितम् उवाच पार्थ पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरुन् इति. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, Just behold, Parth, all the Kurus assembled here. As the super soul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna. The use of the word Rishikesh in this connection indicates that he knew everything, and the word Parth means the son of Pritha or Kunti, is also similarly significant in reference to Arjuna. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjuna that because Arjuna was the son of Pritha, the sister of his own father Vasudeva, he had agreed to be the charioteer of Arjuna. Now, what did Krishna mean when he told Arjuna to behold the Kurus? Did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his aunt Pritha. The mind of Arjuna was thus predicted by the Lord in friendly joking.
तत्र पश्चात् स्थितं पार्थ पितरम् अथ पितामहान् आचार्यान् मूल मातुलान् भ्रातॄन् पुत्रान् सखींस्तथा श्वाशुरान् सुहृदश्चैव सेनयोरुभयोरपि. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers. But on the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bhurishrava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers Bhishma and Somadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Shalya and Shakuni, brothers like Duryodhana, sons like Lakshmana and friends like Ashwathama, well-wishers like um, Ritva etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends.
तान् च समीक्ष्य स कौन्तेय सर्वान् बन्धून् अवस्थितान् कृपया परयाविष्टो विषीदन् idam abravit. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus.
Arjuna Uvacha दृष्ट्वेमां सर्व जनं कृष्ण युयुत्सं समुपस्थितं सिदन्ति मम Gatrani mukham ja parishushati. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. But any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord and um, any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities and which are found in godly persons or in the demigods. Whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in the material qualifications or education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so dedicated to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the very beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And while he was so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver, and his mouth became dry. He uh, he was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically, um, all blood relatives of Krishna, sorry, all blood relatives of Arjuna had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that. Um, only, Still, one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, and a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyati Bhaktir Bhagwanti Akinchana Sarvair Samastade Shurah हराव अभक्तस्य कुतो महद्गुणा मनोरथेनस्ते रथेना सति धावतो बहि. One who has unflinching devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord and has uh, one who is not one but one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are all of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy.
विपातुश्च शरीरे मे रोमहर्षश्च जायते गाण्डीवं श्रमशस्ते हस्तात् त्वक्चैव परिदाह्यते. My whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, my bow Gandhi is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. But there are two kinds of trembling of the body and two kinds of standings of the hair on end. Such phenomena occur either in great spiritual ecstasy or out of great fear under material conditions. There is no fear in transcendental realization. Arjuna's symptoms in this situation are out of material fear, namely loss of life. This is evident from other symptoms also. He became so impatient that his famous bow Gandhi was slipping from his hands, and because his heart was burning within him, he was feeling a burning sensation of the skin. All these are due to material conception of life.
न च शक्नोमि अवस्थातुं भ्रमत भ्रमतीव च मे मनः निमित्तानि च पश्यामि विपरीतानि केशव. I am now able to stand here. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I can see only. I see only causes of misfortune. O Krishna, the killer of Keshi demon. Purport. Due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield, and he was forgetting himself on account of his weakness of the mind. Excessive attachment for material things put a man in such a bewildering condition of existence. भयं द्वितीयाभिनिवेशतः स्यात्. Such fearfulness and loss of material equilibrium uh, take place in persons who are too affected by the material conditions. Arjuna envisioned only painful reverses in the battlefield, he would not be happy even by gaining the victory over the foe. The words nimittani viparitani are significant. When a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, "Why am I here?" Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the supreme self. Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. Once real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna, the conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers the material pain. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him.
न च श्रेयोऽनु पश्यामि हत्वा स्वजनम् आहवेत् न काङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण न च राज्यं सुखानि च. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. Purport. Without knowing that one's self-interest is in Vishnu or Krishna, conditioned souls are attracted by bodily relationships, hoping to be happy in such situations. In such a blind conception of life, they forget even the causes of material happiness. Arjuna appears to have even forgotten the moral codes for a Kshatriya. It is said that two kinds of men, namely the Kshatriya who dies directly in the front of the battlefield under Krishna's personal orders, and the person in the renounced order of life who is absolutely devoted to spiritual culture, are eligible to enter into the sun globe, which is so powerful and dazzling. Arjuna is reluctant even to fight to kill his enemies, let alone his relatives. He thinks that by killing his kinsman there would be no happiness in his life, and therefore he is not willing to fight. Just as a person who does not feel hunger is not inclined to cook. He now decided to go into the forest and live a secluded life in frustration. But as a Kshatriya, he requires a kingdom for for his subsistence, because the Kshatriyas cannot engage themselves in any other occupation. But Arjuna has no kingdom. Arjuna's sole opportunity for gaining a kingdom lies in fighting with his cousins and brothers and reclaiming the kingdom inherited from his father, which he does not like to do. Therefore, he considers himself fit to go to the forest to live a secluded life of frustration.
किं नो राजेन गोविन्द किं जीवितेन वा येषम् अर्थे काङ्क्षितं नो राज्यं भोगाः सुखानि च त इमे अवस्थिता युधे प्राणां त्यक्त्वा दधानि च आचार्य पुत्रस्तथैव च पितामहः मातुलाः स्वशूराः पौत्राः क्या है ये शाला संबंधिनस्तथा एतान् न हन्तुम् इच्छामि घ्नतोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्य राजेसेन हेतो किं नु मही कृते निहत्य धाराष्ट्रतान्नाह कप्रीतिः स्यात् जनार्दन. O Govinda, of what avail to us our kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield. O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, father-in-law, grandsons, brother-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of the all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? Purport. Arjuna has addressed Lord Krishna as Govinda because Krishna is the object of all pleasures for cows and the senses. By using his significant word, Arjuna indicates that Krishna should understand what will satisfy Arjuna's senses, but Govinda is not meant for satisfying our senses. If we try to satisfy the senses of Govinda, however, then automatically our own senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy his senses, and he wants God to be the order supplier for which. for such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. But when one takes the opposite way, namely, when one tries to satisfy the senses of Govinda without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then by the grace of Govinda, all desires of the living entities are satisfied. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here partially uh, due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed on the battlefield and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation of material life. The transcendental life, however, is different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desires of the Lord, he can, Lord willingly, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept of orphan. Arjuna did not want to kill his relatives, and if there were any need to kill them, he desired that Krishna kill them personally. At this point, he did not know that Krishna had already killed them before their coming to the battlefield, and that he was only to become an instrument for Krishna. This fact is disclosed in following chapters. As a natural devotee of the Lord, Arjuna did not like to retaliate against the miscreant cousins and brothers, but it was the Lord's plan that they should all be killed. The devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoer, but the Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by to the miscreants. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees. Therefore the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjuna wanted to excuse them.
पापम् एव श्रयेद् अस्मान् हत्वैतान् आततायिनः तस्मान्नरः नार्हा प्रायं हन्तुं धातराष्ट्रान् स्वबान्धवान् स्वजनं हि कथं हत्वा सुखिनः स्याम माधव. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune, and how can we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Purport. According to Vedic injunctions, there are six kinds of aggressors: a poison giver, one who sets fire to the house, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupies another's land, and one who kidnaps a wife. Such aggressors are at once to be killed, and no sin is incurred by killing such aggressors. Such killing of aggressors is quite befitting any ordinary man. But Arjuna was not an ordinary man. He was saintly by character, and therefore he wanted to deal with them in saintliness. This kind of saintliness, however, is not for a Kshatriya. Although a responsible man in the administration of a state is required to be saintly, he should not be cowardly. For example, Lord Ram was so saintly that people even now are anxious to live in the kingdom of Lord Ram, Ramarajya. But Lord Ram never showed any cowardice. Ravan was an aggressor against Lord Ram because Ravan kidnapped Ram's wife Sita, but Lord Ram gave him sufficient lessons unparalleled in the history of the world. In Arjuna's case, however, one should consider the special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjuna thought that he should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjuna considered that rather kill that than killing his own kinsman for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on grounds of religion and saintly behavior. He did not therefore consider such killing profitable simply for the matter of temporary bodily happiness. After all, kingdoms and pleasures derived therefrom are not permanent. So why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsman? Arjuna's addressing of Krishna as Madhav, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that, as the husband of goddess of fortune, he should not induce Arjuna to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotee.
यद्यपि एतेन पश्यन्ति लोभपहत चेतसा कुलकस्य कृतं दोषं मृतद्रोहे च पातकं कथं न जेयं असमभिः पापाद् अस्मान् निवर्तितुं कुलकस्य कृतं दोषं प्राप्यस्य Janardana. O Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying the family, engage in these types of these acts of sin? Purport: A Kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. Under such an obligation, uh, Arjuna could not refuse to fight because he had been challenged by the party of Duryodhana. In this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of this effect of such a challenge. Arjuna, however, could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, uh, then no one can bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjuna decided not to fight.
कुलक्षये प्रणश्यन्ति कुलधर्मा सनातनः धर्मे नष्टे कुलं कृत्सन् अधर्मो विव्यत्युत. No problem, even I am not able to read properly. With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in a religion. In the system of Varnashram institution, there are many principles of religious traditions to help family members of the to help members of the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. The elder members are responsible for such purifying processes in the family, beginning from birth to death. But on the death of the elder members, such family traditions of purification may stop, and the remaining younger family members may develop irreligious habits and thereby lose their chance for spiritual salvation. Therefore, for no purpose should the elder members of the family be slain.
Adharma, adharma, Vivivat, Krishna, Pradushyanti Kulastriyah, Shisht, Strishu, Dush, Dushtasu, Varshena Jayate Varna Shankar, Shankara. When in religion is prominent in the family of Krishna, the women of all the family become polluted, and from the uh, degradation of womanhood, or descendant of Rishi, comes unwanted arrogancy. Purport: Good population in human society is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. The Varnashram religious principles were so de- de- dis- were so dis- were so dis- were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of its womanhood. As children are very prone to be misled, women are similarly prone to degradation. Therefore, both children and women require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, women will not be misled into alterity. According to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So the different family traditions of religious activities should always engage them, and thus their chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible for participating in the Varnashram system. Um, on the failure of such Varnashram dharma, naturally the women become free to act and mix with the men, and thus adulterily um, is indulged in a risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke uh, elderly in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race and risk of war and pestilence.
शङ्करो नरकायैव कुलज्ञानं कुलस्य च पतन्ति पितरो ह्योषा लुप्तपिण्डोदक्रियाः. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. According to the rules and regulations of total activities, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by the worship of Vishnu because eating the remnants of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kinds of sinful reactions. Sometimes the forefather may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in the subtle bodies as ghosts. Thus, whenever remnants of prasadam are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of miseries. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, Devarishi Bhutapta Rinam नृणाम पितॄणां न किङ्करो नायं वृणि च राजान् सर्वात्मान यः शरण्यं गतो मुकुन्दं परिहृत्य कर्तम्. Anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
दोषैर एतहि कुल ज्ञानम वर्ष शंकर कारक कारकई उत्सादन्ते जाति धर्मा कुल धर्मस्थ शाश्वतम्. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare are devastated. But community projects for four orders of human society combined with family welfare activities as they are set forth by the institution of Sanatan Dharma or Varnashram Dharma are, uh, are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. Therefore, the breaking of the Sanatan Dharma tradition is irresponsible leaders of society bring chaos in the society and consequently um, people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are also led to into chaos.
उत्सन्कुल्मधर्माणां मनुष्याणां जनार्दन नरके नियतं वासो भवतीति अनुशुश्रुमम्. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciple succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. Arjuna bases his argument not on his personal experience but on what he has heard from the authorities. That is the right way of that is the way of receiving real knowledge. One cannot reach the real point of factual knowledge without being helped by the right person who is already established in that knowledge. There is a system of in the Varnashram institution by which before death one has to undergo the process of atonement for his sinful reactions. One who is always engaged in sinful activities must utilize the process of atonement called prayashchit. Without doing so, one surely will be transferred to hellish planets to undergo miserable lives as the result of sinful reactions.
अतो बहत अतो बता महत्पापं कर्तुं व्यवस्थिता वयं यदराज्य सुखलोभेन हन्तुं स्वजनम् उद्यताः. Alas, how strange is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. We are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Purport. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world. But Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities.
यदि माम् अप्रतीकारम् अशास्त्रं शास्त्रपायनः पानयः धातराष्ट्रारणे क्षेमतरं भवेत्. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. It is the custom according to the Kshatriya fighting principles that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjuna, however, decided that even if he attacked by the enemy in such an awkward position, he would not fight. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting. All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord.
Sanjay Uvacha एवं उक्त्वार्जुनः सङ्ख्ये रथोपस्थ उपाविशत् विसृज्य शरं सशरं चापं शोक संविघ्नमानसः. Sanjay said, Arjuna, having just spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Purport. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again. Setting aside his bow and arrows, such a kind and soft-hearted person in devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. The center of Bhakti purports the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Bol.